Episode 2, originally titled Jar Jar's Big Adventure.
I remember seeing the script with that written on it. George would maintain that was the name of it for quite a while.
I forgot that there's people take this stuff seriously.
As a sound designer, one of the first decisions that I make when I think about the sound in the film is to decide where the music will stop in reel one. We always begin with the main title and the familiar theme, and there's always an introductory prologue, but I always find it important to find a breaking point where the sound comes down to a minimum and there's no music, because it's at that point that I kind of figure that the movie is really beginning and everything prior to that is an introduction.
My character is Senator Padme Amidala. She was thinking of maybe just leaving politics, but the new queen asks her to stay and help out and be a senator. So she's still in the political scene, and she had been queen when she was 14 years old. So it's been a very eventful life so far, even though she's still pretty young.
We had to restrain ourselves a little bit on the sound design for these ships coming in order not to just completely blow the music away and maintain that mysterious opening feeling to it all.
It was really liberating, I think, to play this character without this very formal attire, this very set way of being, this armor you have to put on, and this face you have to put on by being, this kind of proper, serious leader, so that people trust that you're not going to screw up, that you take your job in a serious way. So, but it was great now that she's not queen anymore. She can let loose, she can flirt, she can, get her groove on. I really didn't understand making episode 1 what anything was going to look like. But having been through the experience of making episode 1 and then seeing it, it really makes things different, because you can really imagine what a city looks like and that it's going to look real.
This first scene was essentially to set up Padme and the fact that she's now a senator and the fact that there is an attempt on her life, which is the sort of pseudo-plot going forward here, which is what I hang most of the story on in terms of getting Padme and Anakin together. And then sending Obi-Wan off on this mystery of who's trying to kill her. But that is all kind of a red herring, because ultimately what we really want to find out is about the clones and the clone army, and ultimately leading to the Clone War.
Poor day. Alrighty. I'm sorry. Failed you, Senator? No.
The first real scene in the movie is with Palpatine and the Jedi, and it's primarily designed to set up the fact that the Jedi are having a hard time keeping peace and justice in the galaxy, and that they aren't really designed as an army. They're designed as a kind of police force and diplomatic corps. And I just needed to remind the audience here that that the Jedi there aren't enough of them really to conduct a full-scale war, which is something that is more or less unknown in the galaxy at this point. When the Republic came into being, it pretty much ended all the wars because of the Senate and doing things through negotiation.
My negotiations will not fail.
If they do, you must realize there aren't enough Jedi to protect the Republic.
I think Mace is a well-thought-out character who has the trust of a lot of people throughout the universe. It's important to have characters that people can look at and see that they made a decision to be right. Now we have a lot of anti-heroes. I played a lot of them. But there's something to be said for the pure, unadulterated good guy.
So I think it's one of the first shots in which we see Yoda.
It is. I think this is the first shot. Digital Yoda sitting in the chair.
Okay. Can't tell you what a joy it was just to see render the first time. And that's when we really realized, all of us, that this was going to be a good Yoda movie.
You hear about Bail Organa in the initial film that people saw when they first saw Star Wars. And that was when Alderaan was destroyed. And Princess Leia was talking to Obi-Wan, and there's something about one of the messages from Alderaan. So that's when you first hear about this character. And you really don't know too much more about that. So it's interesting how now that we're getting towards the end of the saga, which is really the beginning of it, that you got to see this particular character very briefly, and he's introduced as a senator.
In grave danger, you are. Master Jedi, may I suggest the senator be placed under the protection of your graces?
You really think that's a wise decision under these stressful times?
Along with Padme and Palpatine, you have this whole political backdrop that's happening concurrent to the Anakin, Obi-Wan, Yoda storyline.
Additional security might be disruptive for you, but perhaps someone you're familiar with.
The beginning scenes are all usually technical scenes that get everybody together and get the plot sent off on the right path. In this case, I had to get Anakin and Obi-Wan into the film. So the ultimate point of this scene here is to have Palpatine suggest that the Jedi protect the senator.
One sound we didn't put in this scene was their ears popping as they go up 1,000 stories. The elevator is made actually on a synthesizer, one of the few effects that I would really do that way, by generating two different sine waves, which are slightly different in frequency, and when they're played together, produces a pulsing effect. And it's really a type of sound that goes way back in the history of science fiction sound effects, into the 1950s with films like Forbidden Planet and so on.
Take a deep breath.
The other part of this is that Palpatine's maneuvering things and getting Obi-Wan and Anakin to be with the Queen again. And part of it is to get Obi-Wan to find the clones and find the clone army, which is what part of this setup is for. Because they're being led along this path, the Jedi, toward accepting a clone army and for Palpatine to get powers beyond the ones that are the constitutional powers for an elected official. He wants to have sort of more all-encompassing powers, of which an emergency allows him to have.
It has been far too long, Master Kenobi. Annie? My goodness, you've grown.
Episode 1 was the beginning of the chapter. You have to set up the basic saga. This one, obviously, we kind of know what happens to Anakin. We just don't know how and why. And those are much more dramatically interesting stories, I think, than probably the first one or the fifth and sixth one.
Pretty much most of their scene after this is rather tense, which is set up to show the frustration that Anakin is feeling with being held back by Obi-Wan. We set up Jar Jar in this one. Being from Naboo, the most obvious thing is that he would be part of the senator's entourage.
Shots like this, it's very important that we are watching the actors. I don't want to upstage the live action with the animation. We want to remember that Jar Jar's in the scene, but we have to remain true to what's going on. This is tense moment right now going on between Obi-Wan and Anakin. I really just want Jar Jar watching, and then he's used as a reaction shot right here, which is nice. Just a little swallow and an eye blink, and we're right back into the scene. He's treated just like he was a real actor on the set.
So he's not really a senator, but a representative of the Gungans in the Senate from Naboo, which ultimately becomes more of a plot point.
And you will learn your place, young one.
As the characters get up and walk away, we're also dealing with the clothing issues. Watch as the clothing comes up and follows through. And we're leaving room for the real people to walk. See, he waits, follows Obi-Wan, and then turns to interact with Anakin. Hayden Christensen and Ahmed Best would have rehearsed this on the set, on the day in Sydney, and then once George was happy and Hayden was happy with how that was working, Ahmed steps out of the shot and we shoot a clean play is what we call it. So Hayden and in this case Obi-Wan are interacting with nothing. They're remembering where the eye line was and where they're looking, and then we in the animation department are putting Jar Jar in exactly the same place that Ahmed would have rehearsed. The technical directors are lighting it and the compositors are blending Jar Jar into the scene.
She was pleased to see us.
I was sad Ahmed left. I love Ahmed. He's just brilliant. He was the life and soul of the on-set Star Wars, you know. It's very hard for him. It's a very strange part to play, to be Jar Jar Binks and yet not to be, you know, to be playing him on set and then not to be in the movie.
We'll have to try something more subtle this time, Sam. My client is getting impatient. Take these. Be careful, they're very poisonous. Sam, there can be no mistakes this time.
Captain Typho has more than enough men downstairs. No assassin would try that way.
Whenever you're doing a film, the first act is sort of laying pipe for the rest of the movie. So we have to establish certain situations that will eventually pay off later. And in this case, Anakin's sensitivity to his mother and her plight is used later. And I'm trying to move that part of the exposition forward while at the same time I'm trying to develop the suspense of the assassin about to kill Padme and wondering whether R2 will wake up in time.
Don't worry, no harm will come to her. I can sense everything going on in that room. Trust me.
It's too risky. Besides, your senses aren't that attuned to my young apprentice.
And yours are.
In the original 3, Alec Guinness was only in the first half of the first movie. He cropped up throughout now and again as a shadowy blue guy, and but we only saw him for half the film, and yet he created this iconic figure that I've grown up knowing. You know.
You look tired. I don't sleep well anymore.
And I've been lucky enough to step into the shoes of. There are moments like when I'm trying to do his voice as best I can. I'm trying to imitate the tune anyway in his voice. There's moments that remind me very much of him. There was a line on the balcony with Hayden.
Dreams pass in time.
That I felt was very like Guinness, and funnily enough, George was the first thing he said after we did the tape. But it's very reminiscent of Alec Guinness. So it depends. Some bits remind you very much of him.
Be mindful of your thoughts, Anakin. They betray you. You've made a commitment to the Jedi Order, a commitment not easily broken. And don't forget, she's a politician, and they're not to be trusted.
Jedis can't really fall in love because when they fall in love, obviously they become attached. And Jedis should be able to walk away from anything at any time. And Anakin's really not willing to do that with Padme. It doesn't really affect his ability to be a Jedi at this point, only if he does make that attachment and that connection to these different loves in his life, then that can lead to him losing focus.
It's funny how you work on a movie like this, and the most complicated character and the one that takes the most time turns out to be these little bugs that you're going to see in this jar. See these guys right here? Those caused us so much trouble. And you'd think, oh, well, you get big, huge Clone Wars and battle sequences. No, turns out those are easy compared to this little centipede. There was only one person, Pat Myers, who was one of the senior supervisors on this Cahoon sequence. He could handle it. It's a very technical piece of animation that actually worked out very well, but you'd never think of it watching the movie that this actually caused us most heartache.
The basic idea with the Cahoon bugs was that George wanted creepy. He wanted them to seem very disturbing, that you really wouldn't want to touch one or be around one. So we tried to make them look both like centipedes or millipedes and caterpillars with the very soft, white, translucent body that you just don't want to touch.
I sense it too.
Some of these things you sort of set up the premise of, how am I going to assassinate the senator, and then you come up with an idea, and that idea then leads to a whole sequence. In this case, part of it was I wanted to have these creepy crawlers. I thought that'd be kind of spooky and scary. And then with the droid, it just sort of presented itself that Obi-Wan would do this ridiculous bravado stunt and jump out and grab the droid and hang on to it to try to find out where it was going. And it's that because that's the only evidence he has of who is behind this assassination plot. And it led to a sequence that is exciting and also presented some fun moments between Anakin and Obi-Wan, which shows them as a team.
to try and make these shots look like they're really in the environment that they're in, especially considering that they're driving this shiny flying sports car. We needed to add reflections to tie in the car into the background, into most of these shots. So even shots where we've got a live action car that's used in the plate, most of the shots also have reflections added into them.
Obi-Wan gets, from episode 1 to episode 2, he's slightly more witty, I think. He's very straight and by the book in episode 1. And he's much more confident now. It's 10 years or so have passed, I think. And he's more confident, like you say, he's become the master, not the apprentice anymore. So he's got that a rise in status. He's probably more involved with the actual Jedi Council than he was before. And he's become a bit more witty, he's a bit more relaxed about it, you know. There's more humour in this second film than I managed to get in the first one.
What took us so long? Oh, you know, Master. I couldn't find a speeder that I really liked. There he is.
And having it be so casual makes it kind of funny.
Spent as much time practicing your saber techniques as you wish you would rival Master Yoda as a swordsman. I thought I already did. Only in your mind, my very young apprentice.
It started off, we're just on a big gimbal with a speeder on top of it, and Obi-Wan jumps in. And, you know, I'm trying to do all my own stunts and paying for it every day.
And that actually made you feel rather sick after a while. It's like going on a fairground ride over and over again, where you're not allowed to go and have a hot dog, you know, you've just got to keep doing it. And so in reality, it was just a sick-making experience.
Pull up, Anakin. Pull up.
This was a very difficult scene conceptually because we had to really move around a very large city, which we hadn't done before, which means we had to go through different kinds of districts. You know, the business district, the industrial district, the entertainment district, and they all had to have a sufficiently different look. So, but not so different that you look like you were on sort of different planets or something.
The industrial environment we've got here has a bit of a Blade Runner feel to it. On the last picture, we'd hidden a couple of Blade Runner spinners in the flying traffic, but we talked about it but never got around to actually doing it on this.
Anakin! How many times I told you? Coupling! That was good.
It's easier to reveal character under stress and how they approach it. And it also makes for an exciting sequence.
Sometimes the reflections are on the glass of the window, but also sometimes they're on the vehicle itself. So here you feel that you're really going along because you can see the reflections. There's a good example of reflections.
Personally, I'd very much like to find out who he is and who he's working for.
The layout team that's working in here is adding in these streams of traffic, and they can replicate this over and over and over again. But they mix it up enough with all the different sized vehicles. I don't even know at this point. It seems like hundreds of different vehicles. And some of them are just paint differences and some of them are size differences. But it gave a really nice feel to the traffic in this section of the chase. By adding in all these different streams of vehicles, allowed us to dip in and out of the different levels of the city. Made it very dramatic. These are digital characters, cut to real live action characters.
Lost him. I'm deeply sorry, Master.
That was some shortcut, Anakin. He went completely the other way. Once again, you've proved...
If you'll excuse me...
Digital Anakin falling.
I hate it when he does that.
Digital Anakin. Then live action Anakin. Back to digital.
Sometimes we did half and half, where sometimes the upper part of Anakin is live action, sometimes the bottom is digital. There's a shot coming up here. It's a down shot of his legs dangling, and those are actually computer-generated legs.
That was a tough day. I was just being thrown around all day trying to hold on and climbing all over the speeder. It was lots of fun, but just, I don't know, tiring and hurt a little bit.
was remarkable to watch him. I thought his fingers are going to just rip right off a couple times, but he's a young kid and it's just very physical, and it was remarkable he did all this. We got huge fans blowing on him, of course, as well, too. So very loud on the set when we're shooting this. Big fans blowing at him. The gimbal rocking back and forth, and us shooting him from all these different angles. Hayden actually did that stunt. I thought he was going to break his knees when he did that, but being a young kid, he just jumped right back up again.
Zam crashes, shoots a hole through her dashboard, and we go down. I tumble off and get up, dust myself off, and then we go chasing through the streets. It was lots of fun to shoot, and just knocking extras over and running with a real determined look on your face. It wasn't too difficult, but lots of fun. Anakin is a good kid, passionate about everything that he does, wants to be the best at everything that he does. Whenever a challenge is presented, he never backs down. Has no fear of any physical danger towards himself. A longing for power. He feels suffocated by Obi-Wan.
Patience. Use the Force. Think. Sorry, man. He went in there to hide, not to run. Yes, Master. Next time, try not to lose it.
In this first shot when they walk in, I want to point out in the background we have this big plastic tube, and Jetson style, we have a character that just drops right down and steps out into the bar.
I am dry.
There's a number of sporting events there that characters are betting on. There's a little bit of a pod race taking place in an Arctic environment. There's droid football. There's Opiendo racing.
That's right. Sure, kind of like Big Fat Nunes, for people who remember the Nunes from episode 1.
The club scene that we did was a lot of fun because usually we're just in a sea of blue, not really knowing what we're looking at. And there was an actual set, which was just really cool, and lots of extras walking around. I didn't have too much to do in it. Just walked around and gave everyone an evil eye.
Coming up here is Ahmed Best. That's Ahmed in the blue suit. He was the voice of Jar Jar, of course, both in this movie and the last movie, but he gets his face on camera.
You want to buy some death sticks?
You don't want to sell me death sticks.
This guy was fun. I don't think he quite realized that he was going to get tentacle head or those sort of antenna head bits added. That was not on the set. Those are CG added on later on.
Hayden's such a cool customer, he's so sorted. It's extraordinary to think that he's so young. It's funny for me, it's the first film I've done where I've suddenly felt I'm in the middle bracket, I was always the youngest ones, and I'm now not, so but it's funny because you mustn't patronize people. I don't want to be, showing him how things are, because everyone has to find out for themselves. He's brilliant. I love him to death. It's a great kid.
So Anthony Daniels, the actor portraying C-3PO throughout the series, makes a cameo appearance here. Right here is Anthony Daniels.
It's great because he's, for him to be liberated from the suit, to have his part in the bar scene as the captain, he was on fire. He was on fire to be out of that suit and in the flesh. Big time.
Do you know who it was you were trying to kill?
It was a senator from Naboo.
And who hired you?
It's a job.
Who hired you? Tell us.
When the bounty hunter died, it occurred that it would be more interesting if she was a changeling, and when she died, she went back into her original form. Just to add a little bit of bizarreness to this world we live in. We're always looking for a little edge to make things different and kind of off-center.
Toxic dart.
He loves Obi-Wan because he is sort of a father figure for him. Growing up, he had no parental influences, really, for the past 10 years of his life. So Obi-Wan has taken that place for him. But at the same time, there still is that resistance because Anakin does want to break free of what he's doing right now, which I guess is a theme in all of the Star Wars movies. So there is that conflict and sort of that animosity between the characters. As the leader of the opposition, it will be very difficult to get Senator Amidala to leave the capital.
Until caught, this killer is. Our judgment she must respect.
Anakin, go to the Senate and ask Chancellor Palpatine to speak with her about this matter.
When I'm Palpatine, he's the consummate politician, but obviously the opposite of that. And that's interesting to play, because you're playing a total hypocrite who has to be a brilliant actor. And the trick is to try and convince everyone everything you say is absolutely sincere. And now and again, he enjoys that fact. But you won't see that too often. Just look very closely in the eyes.
They've finally given you an assignment. Your patience has paid off.
Your guidance more than my patience.
You can see that Palpatine is sort of boosting his ego to make him feel that he's better than possibly he really is.
Then you will be invincible.
A lot of his philosophies and things are repeated later on by Anakin when he gets into situations about how he should be allowed more freedom, more assignments. Then we contrast that with the three Jedi and show Obi-Wan's concern about the fact that his apprentice is getting ahead of himself. He's arrogant. And Obi-Wan is kind of put down a little bit by Yoda there, because Yoda says that arrogance exists in the older Jedi too, which is a way of warning Obi-Wan that he may be suffering the same hubris.
A flaw more and more common among Jedi. Too sure of themselves they are. Even the older, more experienced ones.
Remember, Obi-Wan, if the prophecy is true, your apprentice is the only one who can bring the Force back into balance.
Ahmed's a really cool guy. I don't know, does his character really well. He's very physical. There's a lot of animation to his voice. It was sort of weird. I had to get used to it because Jar Jar, I guess, is much taller than what Ahmed is.
Misa accept this with more humility and...
Jar Jar.
He has a visor that comes down over his eyes, sort of helmet mask that sort of blacks out his eyes, so we can't look into his eyes, and then we have to look into Jar Jar's eyes. So when you get into a scene, you start talking to his eyes, you're like, oh, no, you're up there. Oh, sorry, we have to cut. I wasn't looking at him. But he's Jar Jar.
I haven't worked for a year to defeat the Military Creation Act, to not be here when its fate is decided.
Sometimes we must let go of our pride and do what is requested of us.
Anakin, you've grown up.
Master Obi-Wan manages not to see it.
I think that Amidala has changed in her maturity. She's obviously a woman now and not a child anymore. So it's not as surprising for her to be a leader.
Natalie's wonderful to act with. I don't know, it's nice because you can go into work every day and take the attention off of yourself and not think about, what I'm doing and what I should be thinking, and just put your attention on the person you're working opposite. And with Natalie, putting my attention on her, I think works for me because she gives so much.
I'm too unpredictable. He won't let me move on.
She's known him only as a little boy prior to this episode. So when they re-encounter each other, she really treats him like a little kid, and she's his boss, so she treats him in that manner.
It's the only way we grow.
The fact that Amidala doesn't start a relationship with Anakin when she has feelings for him shows that she doesn't really think of her own desires before her role as a leader of people.
But I am grown up. You said it yourself.
Please don't look at me like that.
Why not?
It makes me feel uncomfortable.
Something that's amazing about the whole story of Darth Vader is evil isn't just pure evil. So it's just really interesting because it's sort of like an extended portrayal of how evil evolves. And it's sort of interesting because you see it rather than seeing it in order. What George has done is shown you the evil and made you hate it and made you, be frightened of it. And then takes it back to this sweet little kid, and so it's really an interesting way to look at it, especially when, we're throwing around these terms right now in the world.
What if they realize you've left the capital? Well,
then my Jedi protector will have to prove how good he is.
During the production of Attack of the Clones, I've tried to gather together the first total library, including all of the sounds from all the films, put together on one computer drive with one searchable database, which you need to go through these sounds, because there's approximately 5,000 sounds entered into just the Star Wars catalog right now. And there's a need to really have access to each one of those sounds. And oddly enough, there were many sounds from New Hope which had not been preserved and put into the library. They did exist on the original tapes that were recorded way back in the 70s, but they hadn't been cataloged in a digital fashion so we could have immediate access to them. Hopefully by the time we do episode 3, we will have all of those missing sounds put into our one new database. Dex's Diner brought up the whole issue of creating a new alien voice as well as some background alien voices. The actor who voiced Dex and was also the actor present on the set to play the part provided the voice for Dex.
Obi-Wan!
Hello, Dex.
Take a seat. I'll be right with you.
Originally, I took Dex's voice and lowered it in pitch quite a bit such that it would be a deeper, boomier sound, something more proportional and perhaps consistent with his anatomy, being the squat, portly guy that he is. But we had some difficulty of people understanding the voice when it was too low.
Oh, my friend, what can I do for you?
I had to go back and raise his voice up in pitch, making it more intelligible.
Oh, I ain't seen one of these since I was prospecting on Subterrell.
The functional part of this scene is for Obi-Wan to find out where this particular toxic dart came from. Originally, we had another scene before this which had some analysis droids who couldn't figure it out, and so he came here to find out the answer. But ultimately, I realized that the two scenes were redundant and repeated themselves, and so I felt this was the better of the two scenes, because later on we go back to the Jedi Temple, to the library, and get the sense of sort of arrogance on the part of the Jedi in terms of if they think they know everything. But in this case, this cafe owner knows more than what's in the Jedi library.
I'd say about 12 parsecs outside the Rishi Maze.
I also like the fact that Obi-Wan's got a lot of friends in the galaxy. He's got a lot of contacts, a lot of unorthodox ways of doing things. So he's not just the sort of straight-laced, do-it-by-the-book guy that he has a tendency to be around Anakin.
Cloners, are they friendly?
This is a scene also that introduces the idea of cloners and is the first indication that there's something more at foot here than just trying to track down a bounty hunter who's trying to assassinate a senator. The scene in the library is designed to bring out this plot point that someone in the Jedi Order has been hiding this whole idea that the cloners have been building an army for the Republic. And the reason that nobody knew about it for so long is because they had erased the whole system from the Jedi archives.
According to my information, it should appear in this quadrant here, just south of the Rishi Maze.
I hate to say it, but it looks like the system you're searching for doesn't exist.
I look at R2-D2 and he's iconic. He's part of my childhood. I've known him since I was 6, you know. And I really feel like I do. I really have known him since I was 6. And I found myself working with him, and it's always been a thrill. I remember on episode 1 it was a thrill. The first time he was remote controlled onto set. Suddenly we were all standing around looking at him. But now I've worked with him a lot, you know, and I'm very fond of him. I met the R2-D2 crew right at the beginning of this film, and they didn't even know if he was going to be used at all. And I think it'd be a shame. I still don't think a computer-generated R2-D2 is as good as the real thing.
I think George has been able, with Jonathan, to really meld a very strong, wonderful story, compassionate love story that also at the same time begins to hint at the danger that lies within all of us. You know, what is it that makes us do these horrible things to each other? What is it that makes us do bad things overall? Is it our environment? Is it genetics? Is it the way we're encoded? Is it the way we're wired? Or is it the fact that something happens to us that we never really recover from? Then that is fascinating drama, especially when you know what the outcome is, and especially with somebody as good as Hayden is. He's a wonderful boy. He's a wonderful actor. He's a fantastic person. And there is something damaged there. Not in Hayden, but the character that he plays.
You're exactly the way I remember you in my dreams.
Jonathan's been involved for a long time, actually. He's always been my secret weapon. He was always very interested, obviously, in writing Star Wars. And it was something that George and I had talked about a long time ago. And often when George would get into periods which were difficult for him to, find the space to write, I would say, listen, Jonathan's waiting, anytime. I just have to give him a call. Just let me know. And it got to the point where we were building models of sets and sending them to George. He was having to try and force the script around those sets because there's no way we were going to actually be ready. And, it was a very interesting process because it started to work. And, about May, Jonathan came in, they sat down, they never left each other for a month, and they came up with this incredible thing.
Lost a planet, Master Obi-Wan has. How embarrassing. How embarrassing.
I wanted to do a scene with Yoda. There's one of these little issues about how is it that everybody's trained by Yoda, but it also serves the function of solving this mystery about the fact that there's some mysterious Jedi or person who has kind of sabotaged the library, which is another part of the mystery. This is a chance for me to play with that sort of more mischievous side of his character and get away from the sort of official, serious kind of Yoda that ends up in the Jedi Temple with, on the Jedi Council and that sort of thing, where he really isn't allowed to be as fun and sort of tease people. So in this environment with the kids, he's able to lighten up a little bit, which I really wanted to do for his character, because it's very much more what his character is in the other movies, especially in Empire Strikes Back.
Go to the center of gravity's pull and find your planet. You will. The data must have been erased.
But Master Yoda, who could empty information from the archives? That's impossible, isn't it?
Dangerous and disturbing this puzzle is. Only a Jedi could have erased those files. But who and why? Harder to answer. Meditate on this. I will.
I tried to keep the love story below the surface so that it's not something that they're articulating. It's something that they're feeling, because we have a big scene coming up later where he is able to articulate the whole situation. It's a little tricky because it means that you have scenes that are inactive in what is in essence a very active movie. I did the same thing in The Empire Strikes Back, and I was very nervous about it then, but I had this kind of training session, this kind of philosophical dogleg with Yoda on the planet where I was just sitting around talking about philosophy and the Force and things like this. At the same time, the action was going on in the movie and intercutting those two things. So I use the same technique here, where I have a rather passive story, a love story, and then I contrast it, in this case, rather than with an action kind of piece, it's more of a mystery action kind of piece. There's as much mystery going on as there is action.
If the Senate votes to create an army, I'm sure it's going to push us into a civil war.
The scene in the Queen's Chambers establishes again that there is another queen, and that Padme reports to her, and that this issue of the army is something that could push the Republic into war, and that there's a possibility that this is all going to end in a war. It also counters some of the softness that we've had in the scene between Anakin and Padme before, which is slightly romantic. Padme now reasserts her authority over Anakin, and we see that we're sort of going back and forth between them as two young people having feelings for each other, to her position as a senator and his position as a Jedi Knight. And so in their official capacities, they have a tendency to be slightly abrasive with one another and sort of conflict with who's in charge. She's constantly able to sort of establish her strength in the situation and keep him in his place.
I was thinking I would stay in the lake country. There's some places up there that are very isolated.
Excuse me. I'm in charge of security here, milady.
And this is my home. I know it very well. That is why we're here. I think it would be wise if you took advantage of my knowledge in this instance.
Sorry, milady.
Perfect. It's settled then.
I think ultimately the overriding factor on on Obi-Wan's ship and all of the Jedi ship is that I wanted them to be reminiscent of the design of the Star Destroyers and the Imperial ships, because ultimately that's where those ships grew out of the former guardians of peace and justice in the universe, which were the Jedi. And I didn't particularly want, for thematic reasons, for that to shift. I wanted to keep that wedge-shaped design.
I've always wanted to have my own ship, and he gets one, and he gets to take off in it on his own adventure in this one, which is cool. And there was a scene where they had to close the canopy, and it was all rain, and it's when I land on Camino, and it's pouring rain. So I was sitting in there with all these buttons and lights that flash about, and the pouring rain, I couldn't hear them outside saying action or cut. It was quite a good fun just to sit there.
The Prime Minister is expecting you.
I'm expected?
The scene of finding this mysterious planet, which was missing in the archives, we will now find out why it was erased. Obviously, Obi-Wan is here trying to find out where the bounty hunter is, and he stumbles into something completely different. And so he kind of has to play along with this charade that he came for another reason and try to figure out what that reason is, and then be shocked by the fact that it's an army.
May I present Lama Su, Prime Minister of Camino.
These characters, the Kaminoans, I wanted to do a little tip of the hat to Stephen in Close Encounters to use a more traditional alien, the kind that everyone says come on the spaceships that land here on Earth, and deal with a much more sophisticated society than anything we've seen before, that looks different, that is operating on a level that's even beyond that of Coruscant. And I wanted it to be a water planet because water is where life began, and in this case, this is a place where these people create life in the form of clones.
I'm sorry, it's Master...
Jedi Master Cypher Diaz is still a leading member of the Jedi Council, is he not?
Master Cypher Diaz was killed almost 10 years ago.
Doing an intimate two-handed scene across the table to thin air is quite an interesting prospect.
But I'm sure he would have been proud of the army we've built for him.
I had that long section where they were making the cloned army, where I was just on my own in a blue box for days, and it just about drove me nuts.
Tell me, Prime Minister, when my master first contacted you about the army, did he say who it was for?
Of course he did.
I also wanted to always keep this Obi-Wan part of the story as a mystery, of a constantly unraveling mystery of new things coming in and him trying to figure out how all the pieces fit together.
Episode 2 is very different from all of the other Star Wars films we've done. It has a genuine romantic story and needs and can hold a sort of classic love theme, if you like. George said to me, why don't you make a love theme? It's like the old Hollywood movies, when you could see Claudette Colbert in love with some handsome guy. Meaning, I think, that what's expressed here musically is in the sort of traditional vein of a love theme. But also, it also has a sort of tragic aspect, I think. And the aspect of love that's eternal really is love that goes on beyond death. So it's Liebestod, love, death in a certain sense. Love is something that is infinite and goes on forever. And the music, I think, expresses that. You also have an aspect in episode 2 of the lovers that's very similar to classic love stories of Tristan and Isolde, Romeo and Juliet, where the lovers are separated by family, as they are in Romeo and Juliet, or by rank as they are in episode 2. We have a queen and we have a soldier, a Jedi, and their ranks in the social structure of the way they live separate them and creates tension for their coming together. And so the love theme expresses also this tragic aspect of the things within social structures, even in the galactic world of George Lucas, that separates lovers, and puts a tragic element in.
I shot that whole sequence on my own, well, with two great actors, but wearing crash helmets with cardboard cutouts of an alien gaffer taped to the top of them. I was thinking technology, and what it boils down to is a kind of safety helmet from a working site and a bit of cardboard. So anyway, I was looking at those up there, and doing the whole thing surrounded by blue. It's entirely, there's nothing there. I think there was a chair there at one point or something.
Oh, yes, it's essential. Otherwise, a mature clone would take a lifetime to grow.
It's just dead. It's like walking through a dead space and trying to be alive in it, surrounded by nothing. It's hard work. So you do what you can, and you just hope that someone will make it work, because that's obviously the exercise. Otherwise, we would have things there, and we would have a set. But to not have either is kind of, you're just in the hands of the computer guys. So I don't know. It was up to them to make that bit work. I got through the lines at the end of the day. By the end, I'd said everything I was meant to. So it's up to them now.
For himself. Curious, isn't it?
That entire sequence was shot in blue. So it really had to be created completely digitally because I wanted to create a completely different environment. I wanted it to be kind of a very slick and very, very ultra modern. There is a surreal look to it that is created by the use of reflection and blown out light and a lot of hot surfaces. When you get into a set that is that complex, it's very hard to do it any other way because of the subtlety of the way the light is blown out and the kind of ethereal otherworldliness of it. It's not very concrete. It's all kind of white on flare, on lots of flares, lots of burned out areas.
I think she really struggles with sort of the career versus romance issue in episode 2. So it's not really just liberating to suddenly step down from the role of queen because she still has ambitions for herself and a path that she wants to take and things that she wants to do for her people because she cares about her people. And most, great politicians are politicians because they want to help people and because they care about people. And so it's really a struggle for her to say, can I be selfish and, fall in love myself when I have all these aspirations and all these things I need to accomplish?
I don't think the system works.
How would you have it work?
The hardest part of playing Anakin, I guess, is to find that medium between what Jake brought to it and what Darth Vader is and make it believable and still make the transition evident and the development, because it's hard when you're playing someone where there is such a drastic change from the beginning of the film to the end of the film, but still have it all be cohesive and make sense is difficult to bring it all together.
Sounds an awful lot like a dictatorship to me.
Well, if it works.
And they sort of have these encounters where they discuss their ideas and they discuss their, lives. And she sees this sort of darkness to him, but obviously that's always intriguing. It's always like the bad boys.
Perhaps more versions of this shot came out of ILM in one form or another than any other because of the real difficulties of putting it together essentially after the fact. There originally was quite a bit of footage shot of Anakin creeping up to some shacks, jumping on board, riding around. She stood off to the side and watched him and laughed, and eventually he galloped away over a hill and disappeared. And then she became worried and ran after him and comes over the hill and finds that he has fallen from the animal and perhaps is injured, and she runs down and the scene is picked up where it is now. But editorially, that all changed because it just took too much time.
I wanted to establish one that, since it's only been 10 years since the last movie and this movie, that we have growth acceleration so we can get these clones to be 20 years old. They're old enough to be soldiers. And that I wanted to tell this little story of Boba Fett, that there was a relationship between stormtroopers and Boba. But ultimately, Boba would have been too old, so I made him Boba's father, which was the clone that started the stormtroopers.
May we see him? Sure.
George wanted him, when he opened the door opened and he saw me for the first time, and he wanted him to look very suspicious of me. And I just told him to pretend like I'd done a really bad fart, which looked a bit like suspicion, I thought. I thought it was a good note, I was just practicing, exercising my directorial muscles. But I thought it worked, George, of course, pulled it back because it was too much.
This is Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's come to check on our progress.
Your clones are very impressive. You must be very proud.
This was a great scene in Sydney. The intensity between these two actors was remarkable. I was sitting about 40 feet away and I was squirming in my seat because it looked like they were about to jump on each other and pound each other out. It was really great to watch. Tanwi is just a background character in here, and once again, I don't want to upstage this remarkable scene between these two characters. I just want the audience to remember that she's still there and she's alive, so she's reacting to Boba coming back in the room just like you would if you were paying, if you're watching. I'm really thinking about these characters as actors, as being in the scene, as being interacting with their environment, listening to the characters, just like the regular actors are doing in this moment. A great actor listens and interacts, and it just flows between the two of them. Watch the interchange between these two actors, and watch Ewan's eyes. Not only when he's blinking, but how his eyes move around. It's what we call eye scan. Watch his eyes dart across the face of Django here near the end. He's going to look up, and then watch his eyes.
Thank you for your time, Django.
Always a pleasure to meet a Jedi.
There. See that? Just the little sharp eye movements. That's what we call eye scan. We do it all the time as human beings. You're going to see Boba do this to his father. Watch when he turns back and looks to his dad. There's such expressive eyes, just naturally. Okay, there's going to be close up of his dad. Looks down, eye scan, eye scan. See the eyes darting around?
Pack your things. We're leaving.
I'm trying to put that kind of subtlety, that kind of nuance, that kind of level of acting into the digital characters.
We're having lunch and I'm just screwing around, trying to make her laugh, and I use my powers to pick up some fruit, which I'm not supposed to. Obi-Wan would be very upset if he caught me.
Which scares me a little, but turns into a little flirting tactic. And I don't think George was satisfied with the dialogue he had written because he told Hayden and I to just improvise, which was amusing because, of course, it got inappropriate very quickly. But it was a fun scene to shoot, although we felt pretty stupid, biting fake fruit, which didn't exist out of the air.
Obviously, he is struggling with a lot of emotions in playing with her and talking to her and being charming.
From the moment I met you, all those years ago, not a day has gone by when I even thought of you.
She's beginning to see him as an attractive young man, but they've already decided in that very first awkward scene that they weren't going to go there with that first kiss. But obviously that kiss has opened up a whole set of underlying feelings that they can't get rid of that will be dealt with later on here.
I'm haunted by the kiss that you should never have given me.
We're constantly playing with them, trying to connect in a romantic way, but her not giving into it, even though you can see that she's struggling just like he is. But I wanted a lot of the connections to be going on under the surface, and then only occasionally sort of reveal themselves, rather than being constant through the whole movie where they're constantly talking about their relationship. They go from being friends and having fun, and then they reveal themselves and then they go back to being sort of professional, and her caring about him and some of his suffering when it comes to the mother and her compassion toward him. But I keep the romantic part again locked down for a while and sort of below the surface.
Come back to it. You're starting to become a Jedi. I'm a senator. If you follow your thoughts through to conclusion, it'll take us to a place we cannot go.
He does realize that, yes, this would not be a good idea because it would jeopardize my career, jeopardize her, and it probably wouldn't be a good thing.
Editorially, one of the challenges of this middle section of the movie is that you have two parallel stories, and you can't stay with any one story too long out of proportion with the other, or the other story gets diminished in some way, or in a worst case, by the time you cut back to it, people are jarred a bit because they're trying to go back and remember where they left off the last time they saw Obi-Wan, for instance. The other issue is that you need equal amounts of story. You have to have a scene of Anakin and Padme corresponding to each scene of Obi-Wan. So therefore, certain scenes of Anakin and Padme, and there's a bit more material with them, were removed from the story in order to keep the number of scenes proportional with Obi-Wan.
You're right. We would destroy it.
Scene with Obi-Wan leaving Kamino is, again, one of those scenes that is putting the plot together, which is the fact that whoever ordered this army, nobody knows about it. It's a complete mystery, which is, I think, one of the key issues. But he is also reporting back saying that he's found the bounty hunter that was trying to kill Padme. And it's a bit of a mechanical scene in that it's basically him getting permission to go after Jango Fett, and at the same time it allows us to establish that neither Yoda nor Mace nor the Jedi Council had any idea about this clone army.
I have successfully made contact with the Prime Minister of Kamino. They are using a bounty hunter named Jango Fett to create a clone army. I have a strong feeling that this bounty hunter is the assassin we are looking for.
And the further idea that the Jedi, their ability to use the Force is diminishing. It's established very early on in the very first scene where Yoda says, the dark side has clouded everything. But an idea that that's important and that complex really needs to be said a couple times. And the fact that as the dark side grows, it clouds their vision. They're very concerned that people find out that they're losing their abilities, that it wouldn't help the situation of the separatist movement and all the other things that are going on, because it's a very tense situation, and the Jedi are completely outnumbered in terms of trying to keep control of the situation.
Bring him here. Question him. We will.
The first time he filmed this scene with Mace at his desk, it was a different concept. The set was different, and Mace was actually behind a desk, and Yoda was in a chair. And it just, very film noir, but Jedi's behind a desk became an issue. Why would they have a desk? What does he give interviews? There was a deliberate attempt in the Obi-Wan story to make it stylistically like the film noir movies that were made after World War II and into the 1950s. The detective movies where our hero roamed through rainy streets and met up with shadowy characters, and they often were in offices with Venetian blind lighting and strips of light and pools of light and shadow. And there was a deliberate design in the Obi-Wan part of the story of this movie to make it have elements of film noir in it.
Don't go.
I don't want to disturb you.
Your presence is soothing.
You had another nightmare last night.
Jedi don't have nightmares.
I heard you.
Anakin has not had a relationship with his mother since he's left her. They haven't seen each other except, all he has to hold on to are his memories, which are soon fading. So I think he wants to make that re-embracement with his mom before he loses that part of himself, which is a strong part of himself.
She is in pain. I know I'm disobeying my mandate to protect you, Senator, but I have to go. I have to help her.
I'll go with you.
I'm sorry, I don't have a choice.
They were massive sets, and that's what blew me away. Just the size and the scale of some of the sets and the detail that goes into it and the texture of the sets, the quality. To go on from that, within my costume, I have the rocket pack on my back, so that'll give me enough propulsion to speed off into the sky and get another perspective on my foe. Boba Fett was quite a worn-down bounty hunter's outfit with all the scratches, and the wear of it has been sort of run down quite a bit. But my one's a little bit more sleek and shiny, and we've gone for this new kind of silver millennium kind of color.
Yeah, I did lose my lightsaber, and that's something a Jedi should never do. But it was raining and it slipped. Just trying to, as a Jedi, I don't know, as an actor, just trying not to slip, because it was really slippy, I remember. It's so broken down. A fight like that is so broken down into tiny pieces, Basically, we were shown how we'd work on one moment, like wrapping a cable around a pillar, for instance, where he's flying around. We'd just work on that technically, so that I wouldn't slip or fall over, and till it looked right.
Oh, not good. It turned out to be a rather exciting sequence. We had very little set to work with. And once they go over the edge, it gets very complicated. Most of it's actually animated. It doesn't look like it, but it is.
The only practical shot, right, is a shot of the rope going around the pole. We did that in reverse. We go for the easiest way to do it, which because that was one kind of what we call a one-off shot. There's no other shot that is just like it. It only made sense that we build a full-scale, set, and we shoot that rope in reverse.
And they've been shooting things in reverse since the days of Charlie Chaplin. It's a technique that we've known about, of course, from film school and from watching films, and it just, in this case, works perfectly in this state-of-the-art modern film.
There are lots of little inside gags in the movie. For people that actually know Star Wars well and get connections. So there's a little bit of a Where's Waldo in all of this just for the fun of it, and we enjoy doing it. I enjoy doing it.
And here we return to Tatooine. So this establishing shot has got just about everything you could want in it. It's got the computer-generated ship, has a miniature for the landing base here, have all these live-action people. There's a whole bunch of computer-generated people, CG creatures, CG vehicles, rickshaw droids, everything. Every technique is represented in that scene.
We come back to visit one of my favorite characters, Watto. Watto is one of my very favorite characters from The Phantom Menace. I was very happy to hear when he's going to be put back into this movie. Originally, he wasn't going to make it in episode 2, but myself and John lobbied to get him back into the movie. I think he adds a lovely scene here. Wonderful interaction with him, and there's some great acting that's going to come up here. Right here. Watch that eye scan again. The eyes moving around. He's thinking, a realization, and then the reaction.
Years ago, we recorded some flies buzzing around a pile of horse dung here at the ranch, and this was finally our chance to use those flies.
Este is you. Hey, you sure sprouted, huh? A Jedi.
Some of the film, ultimately ends up writing itself once you get through the first third of the film. If Anakin is going to go after his mother, then the first place you'd have to go would be Watto, because that's where we left her. So that necessitates that we have a scene between Anakin and Watto, where Watto reveals where she is or takes you to the next step. In this kind of situation, a lot of the script almost writes itself in terms of what scenes have to follow. Otherwise, you'd just be jumping too fast through the story.
You beat that, eh? Yeah.
I think he sort of has this anxiousness in him now that wasn't there before, which leads to him making some decisions that maybe he shouldn't have as a Jedi. It's always in the back of his head that he failed his mother. He said he was going to come back and save her and be with her and free her. I think that maybe they can communicate on a different level. She visits him in his dreams, sees her as an apparition. He knows that she's in pain and that he has to save her and that she's in trouble. And that is what sends him on his journey.
I wanted to also vary the types of danger. We start with a kind of depth charge that is different from lasers and anything else we've ever used, which gives an exciting piece as it crunches through the asteroids. And it gives it's also a nice visual sequence. Then eventually we get into our normal dogfight. In order to do that, I had to figure out a way of getting Jango behind Obi-Wan. So I had to get them to switch places, which the little sequence inside the asteroid allowed me to do. And then I was able to get to the traditional dogfight. And then play a little bit of the joke of the fact that Obi-Wan doesn't like to fly. And use a different kind of laser that's much more rapid fire than anything we've seen before.
He doesn't seem to take a hint, this guy.
And then ultimately, the third part of this, we used a rocket. A lot of these action set pieces and everything, I break them down into 2 or 3 little pieces. Each one has its own story, and each one is sort of different and varied from the other. Whether it's the fight on the Camino landing platform, whether it's this, all of them have little beginnings and ends. Whenever you're doing an action set piece, you have to keep it varied. You have to keep it alive and fresh. You can't just keep doing the same thing over and over again. And you have to have it build. Usually you have it start kind of slow and then build to something very, very intense. You put the most intense thing at the end and the least intense thing in the beginning.
Blast! This is why I hate flying.
From the start, I was attracted to this sequence with the asteroid chase. Might be the opportunity for the sound effects to have their spotlight, because here was a chase between 2 ships in an interesting space environment. They had weapons. There wasn't much dialogue. It wasn't the climactic Armageddon of the movie in which you may have wanted the music to give it the added meaning and energy that you'd want at a climax. This was an exercise in the middle of the movie, kind of if anything, it might kind of wake us up from several reels which have been dialogue-oriented and story-oriented. And it was also the opportunity, which we hadn't had for quite a while, for just action in space.
Prepare jets in the spare part canisters. Fire them now.
None of it feels great to do. It always feels good to see, you know? I mean, you're sitting in a wooden ship being rocked around by guys but to see it, it's extraordinary. There's always this kind of fine line when we're doing Star Wars movies with the Force and what it does and what it doesn't do, and that's got something to do with this playing things very straight, is because as a Jedi you have a kind of understanding of what's about to happen, or, you know, the sense of things next door, what's going on, you know. This could be interesting in some situations.
Well, R4, I think we've waited long enough.
Obi-Wan Kenobi's never flown. I don't think we've seen him fly at all. Not actually controlling anything. So I get to take off and go on this search, a bit like Luke Skywalker does in his X-Wing when he goes to find Yoda. So I have a little journey like that, which is brilliant.
There's an unusual concentration of Federation ships over there, R4.
Most expensive Saturday morning cereal in the world, isn't it? I remember being a kid and going to the cinema when we had such a thing as a cinema in the afternoons for kids, you know. There would be a cereal before the main feature, like Flash Gordon or Rocket Man or Professor Pepperpot or something like that. And you would go back mainly to see that, the next series of that. And I think that he's proven that people are coming back to see this, you know, to see the next story or the story before it.
Soap operas do things like this where you have stories that go and intermingle and go on and on, but they don't do it backwards. You're making a film that you're supposed to see in order, but you've made it backwards. I don't think anybody's done that before. I don't know why anybody would.
Once we get on location, you just have no control. And it's the most fun for me personally because we have no idea what's out there for us. You know, we've got a lot of wacky weather to deal with. That's the thing about locations. You just never know what's going to happen.
Hello. How might I be of service? I am C3PO.
Now, the interesting part about these shots is that this was shot with C-3PO with the uncovered version of him. He wasn't covered. And so later on, because there was a change in the story, go to London again and reshoot Tony with his covered suit and recomp it on top of him and remove him first and then recomp the new version of him. And the reason is there was a part in the story in which we learn how he ended up being covered. If you recall in episode 1, he was like all his C-3PO. All his parts were showing.
Padme.
I guess I'm your stepbrother. I had a feeling you might show up someday.
You see, like, for instance, that shot also was replaced. C-3PO wasn't there, which is put him in.
Cliegg Lars. Me is my wife.
The difficult part about these shots, too, the outside shots, that it was so hot in Tunisia that the back focus, the rack focus in the cameras didn't work very well. So actually, all the focus was on the walls. It wasn't on the actors. So the actors were a little soft. So we had to, reverse that. In other words, sharpen the actors and defocus the background a little bit.
From the tracks, she was about halfway home when they took her. Those Tuscans walk like men, but they're vicious, mindless monsters.
This was really great to work on because it's going back to the original trilogy and it's something that all the fans are very familiar with, and we're very respectful of those things. So we go back ourselves to the trilogy and take a look at the homestead, environment. And we always make sure that the color is correct, that the shadows are right, that all the familiar things that are very, again, familiar to the fans are there. Because we don't like getting letters from the fans saying, why did you do that? And by the way, George is very, very familiar with this stuff, and he picks it up like right away when there's something that is out of place. And he always refers us to, just go look at Empire and see how we did that, or what's in there.
Throughout the film, they're put in these very extreme settings because they're in hiding that really lend themselves to, falling in love. And they're really conducive to two people finding very passionate emotions for each other.
I think that George is trying to convey in the Star Wars series a sense that we live in a world where there's good and evil. And you're not necessarily going to take away one and enhance the other. And there's a sort of deeper side than just fighting evil to life. There's the Force, which is that inner thing that keeps you going, that helps you deal with a world where there is evil.
I tried in this particular set of sequences to kind of merge the two stories together visually so that you get a sense that they're both going on searches and trying to resolve mysteries. And it has to do a lot with, in Anakin's case, a pending flaw in his character, and in Obi-Wan, what you could only describe, I guess, as a flaw in the system, which is Count Dooku. This is how we introduce Count Dooku. I do it very vaguely, very offhanded, and very bits and pieces. And I really save the real scene with Count Dooku for later on in the prison, where he confronts Obi-Wan. So I've tried to be reasonably coy about it here, even though I do show him. I do need to establish who he is. I do need to establish this situation with the treaties and that sort of thing in order to move the plot along. But I've tried to be as circumspect about it as possible.
I play a character called Count Dooku, who is a Jedi. He also turns out to be Darth Tyrannus, the tyrant Darth, which is the name given to him by the Emperor, Darth Sidious. We must persuade the Commerce Guild and the Corporate Alliance to sign the treaty.
What about the senator from Naboo? Is she dead yet? I am not signing your treaty until I have her head on my desk.
I am a man of my word, Viceroy. He is a Sith because he represents the dark side. At some period in his life, he decided that he was disillusioned with the whole conception of the Jedi. As I explained to you earlier, I am quite convinced that 10,000 more systems will rally to our cause with your support, gentlemen. As a result of what he has done, what he has achieved, the war has begun, which is what they're aiming for in the ultimate destruction of the Jedi and the complete imposition of their rule. And this is, of course, what ultimately results in the Clone War.
Obviously, everything hinges on political issues. Fortunately, I was able to deal with most of the political issues and get them all set up and explained in Phantom Menace. So in this one, it's much easier to kind of, in just a few sentences, sort of follow what the political story is. And we don't have to go into quite the detail and the complications that we did in the first film.
This is a matte painting that we did. Kind of an interesting thing because we knew that Tatooine had 2 suns, but we never knew that it had 3 moons. It's a miniature on this town, little village, and this shot we worked on for months. It's a very romantic view of Anakin's cape.
So now we're at night, and again, it's the same kind of stalking on a desert planet, only now it's Anakin stalking the Tusken Raider camp instead of Obi-Wan stalking the Geonosian termite hill. But I played these so they'd be sort of visually reminiscent of each other.
The creatures that you're seeing here in the sand are there as a story point to maybe making noise so we don't hear the lightsaber. They're called massifs. They were originally going to meet Obi-Wan on the rock ledge on Geonosis, but that scene got cut out and we'd already built the model, so we decided to put him in this scene.
And then in this scene, obviously it's a very emotional scene. There were lots of, several splits, meaning that we would take Schmidt from one take and Anakin from another. In some cases, erasing or putting, like for instance, one of these shots, the hand is from one take and his face from another.
You look so handsome.
I think that what happens is that George likes a specific performance from one take and a specific performance for different actors. And once he's on the set and he realizes that he's got what he needs to make that scene work, he just moves on and lets ILM work out the details. I mean, he knows that we can work, all these things out so that the story kind of makes sense for him, as a matter of kind of a director's vision. And you see, I don't think that these kinds of things come up on the set, on purpose, in terms of George. I think that he shoots as many takes as he thinks, that he's got, what he needs. And then once he gets into the editorial process, he realizes that some things don't match. but because of the coverage that he did on the set, he has what he needs for us to do the shots.
He was absolutely, infuriated just the fact that the physical side of her, she was badly beaten. But it was difficult to play because when your mom is dying in your arms, you want to break down, you just want to cry and bawl and go crazy. But I did have to hold back. I felt like she was dying. And he goes psycho a little bit. He goes out and murders everybody.
Anakin! Anakin! No!
I think Mace has seen a lot, has been around for a while, and he has to understand a lot of different things about what is and is not going on around him and the disturbances in the Force and trying to decipher what they are and what they mean to the greater good of everyone and not just to his specific group of people.
Something terrible has happened. Young Skywalker is in pain. Terrible pain.
The transmitter is working, but we're not receiving a return signal. Coruscant's too far. R4, can you boost the power? We'll have to try something else.
Maybe we can contact Anakin on Naboo. It's much closer. Anakin? Anakin, do you copy? This is Obi-Wan Kenobi.
The scene with Obi-Wan is primarily a functional scene. We have to have Obi-Wan realize that Anakin has gone from one planet to another planet. And then we have to set up the fact that he's being watched, so he's in danger. But we do have to get a message back to the council. And this is a functionary device to get the message back to the council about Jango Fett and about the trade treaties and things that are being made, and to include Anakin and Padme in this process so that everybody's sort of tied together. It's kind of hard when you get all your characters on different planets in the galaxy to have a way of connecting them up so that they're all part of the same pieces of information at the same time. But this does allow me to have a little bit of a include R2 and give him something to do and make him a pivotal character.
Anakin, this message. Anakin. Has been knocked out. Retransmit this message to Coruscant.
It's very hard when you're making a film with so many characters to give them all something to do, because the plot usually revolves around a few of them, but not all of them. And then they all have functions. They're little functions, but they're functions. In this one, R2 and Jar Jar and 3PO, have things to do, but some of them are very critical to people being saved and everything, but just the story isn't really about them.
He feels a lot for other people. He's always had a sense of longing for love in his life. I guess that also pushes him towards the dark side. The strength of the dark side is seductive, I guess, to him. Power that it presents.
The shifter broke. Life seems so much simpler when you're fixing things. I'm good at fixing things. Always was. But I couldn't. Why'd she have to die? Why couldn't I save her? I know I could have.
He's very unhappy about that. I mean, he's very sad and depressed. There was some dialogue here before that I took out because it seemed to get in the way of the emotional moment of this scene, where she says to be angry is to be human, and he says, but to control your anger is to be a Jedi. And so that issue was actually laid out in dialogue at one point, and I decided to sort of pull back from it because it seemed to me that it was pretty obvious that was what was there, and I didn't think I needed to state it quite as boldly as I did. And that issue will come up at a later time. And I just felt it took away from the moment of his sadness. And I thought the sadness pretty much said the same thing without words.
I killed them. I killed them all. They're dead. Every single one of them. And not just the men, but the women. And the children, too.
She's this very powerful woman, and I think Padme is sort of intrigued by this darker side she sees to him, especially because she's such a person who tries to fix everything. She sees problems in the world, and she still has that, idealistic passion to think she can change everything, and she can change people who have darkness to them. And she sees goodness in him. She sees this passion, and she sees that there's a lot of anger in that passion, that it's not just the goodness and purity of her passion. So I think that is definitely attractive for her, that there's something that she can try and help heal or mend that might be a big surprise for her when she can't.
The Homestead location is the original location that the 1977 Star Wars was shot at. This crater was still there. It had worn down a little bit, so they built it back up. But this is the same site. So the Homestead igloo piece was rebuilt, and the evaporators were all brought in again. But this is the original location. It was really kind of fun to be there.
Since these films are made over a period of many years, one's artistic sensitivities are constantly in motion. And sometimes when you look at the Star Wars films and you're responsible for putting it together, either as an editor or as a sound designer, you have a tendency to say, well, let's try something really new here. Something that in some way just reflects all the changes you have as an artist. That you have a different sensitivity, or maybe you want to imitate something else you've seen recently, or your inspiration comes from a different spot. And although some of that creeps into each film, there's a much stronger force at work to keep things consistent stylistically, so that ultimately when these films are seen as one chronicle of 6 films, that they all will seem to be of one continuous style. These films will all belong together as chapters, really, in one big epic, one giant mega serial. And therefore, they need to seem as though they all were produced and created at the same time by the same filmmaker exercising the same authorship to them. And so a lot of things we do are governed by what's happened previously in the Star Wars films.
I have tracked the bounty hunter Jango Fett to the droid foundries in Geonosis. The Trade Federation is to take delivery of a droid army here.
You have to sort of tease these things out of George. He, now and again, when he's talking a little unguardedly, he said, there are just so many layers in this scene. And you think, well, yes, they are. And it's not just in terms of character and color of personality, but simple basic things like the color of the set. Chancellor's Palpatine's office, which is very grand indeed, very big. I don't know what he does in it. It's just big. He just sort of sits there. He exudes power. There doesn't seem to be any sort of paperwork going on. Of course, paperwork. I'm sorry, Galactic Universe. There's no technology of any kind that's visible. But of course, it's not about that. It's not about a working atmosphere. It's about a statement of power the Chancellor has. I think it's roughly oval. So I suppose I won't make too many tendentious parallels. The Oval Office is oval, and not because it's easy to do things because of the shape, but somehow that itself makes it definitive and special in the heart of the White House, So it's the seat of power. And in number 2, there's some red in that set, some rather wonderful red, but against a background of harsh, metallic, high-tech gray. And I know that red will slowly seep out of Palpatine sets altogether to become the Emperor's set, which was a really forbidding grey world And I sort of know that's the way it's going. But it's interesting that it should go by degrees, and I'm sure people want to look back to see what Senator Palpatine's office was, which was a bit more colourful and so on. But slowly the colour is just sort of dripping out of the atmosphere, just as it's dripping out of this man. Although you'll notice in part two that my eyes get redder, but they've got a long way to go to get to yellow, the colour spectrum plan George has in mind. But that's where they're going to go eventually.
Unfortunately, the debate is not over.
It's always a joy to run into Jimmy and, be around him. Jimmy and I did, theater together years ago before anybody knew who either of us was. It's great to work with people that are competent, number one. And it's even better to work with people that are good people who are your friends, that are deserving, that are capable, and that bring a good vibe to the set because, I happen to love my job and I like coming to it. He knows how to make the job fun for everybody around him.
Traitor.
Oh, no, my friend. This is a mistake, a terrible mistake. They have gone too far. This is madness.
I thought you were the leader here, Dooku.
This had nothing to do with me, I assure you. I will petition immediately to have you set free.
Well, I was able to get in this little thing if you put two Sith together and they try to get others to join them to get rid of the other Sith. So Dooku's ambition here is really to get rid of Darth Sidious. And he's trying to get Obi-Wan's assistance in that and help in that so that he and Obi-Wan could overthrow Sidious and take over. And it's exactly the same scene as when Darth Vader does it with Luke to try to get rid of Sidious. So whenever you get too many people together with these Sith Lords, they all gang up and they all try to get rid of the strongest one. And then they'll try to get rid of each other. So the one facet of the Sith reality is that they're constantly plotting against each other, and therefore there can't be more than two of them at any time.
This dungeon scene was not originally part of the shoot. This is something that George added after he'd gotten a rough cut of the movie together, decided he wanted to have a scene of these two. So this force field effect was made by having a CG particle system that flows around Ewan. A big field of particles that stream from one of the emitters to another and flows around a computer-generated shape of Ewan. So we would match the position of him and match his motion and then use that as an object for the particles to flow around.
Hundreds of senators are now under the influence of a Sith Lord called Darth Sidious.
I don't believe you.
The Viceroy of the Trade Federation was once in league with this Darth Sidious.
It's a fascinating experience for me to work in a film of this kind because, for one thing, I have not ever worked with any of the other actors. And I don't very often work with two actors at the age of 19, being nearly 60 years older than they are. And I don't have a great deal in terms of involvement with them, but George Lucas did in fact tell me that I have more to say in this film than any other character, in terms of fairly long speeches.
It may be difficult to secure your release.
This is one of the more, I think, boldly revealing scenes in terms of what is happening on the political front and the movement of Palpatine to total control and authority over everybody, which is leading toward the evolution of the Empire and the evolution of the Emperor. This crisis has been created, and the only solution is to give him more power, and Jar Jar becomes the dupe, making that proposal that allows him to have that power. And even the Jedi are there. The Jedi aren't really allowed to be involved in the political process. They're there, but they can't suddenly step and say, no, you can't do that and stuff. They have to let the political process go.
We shall have order.
It is with great reluctance that I have agreed to this calling.
At least I knew what to expect up to a point because I'd been in the Senate before with Natalie in number one.
The power you give me, I will lay down when this crisis has abated.
And of course, you're up in the air, and the crew and the cameras are all, well, the cameras aren't downstairs, but the operators are. And every now and again, a camera whizzes past your ear like a rocket ship. And sometimes it can be very close to your nose indeed. And it was the first day of filming in Australia. And of course, first days on movies, however familiar everyone is with it themselves, are always nerve-wracking. And here we were in Australia for the first time with a terrific crew. And there were a few other actors around too who were entering the Star Wars universe. And that's daunting for the first time, God knows it is. But you just have to believe that you're in another movie with people you know who everybody wants the best, and it's fine. But sometimes that's hard. And sometimes you think, oh, my God, I'm in Star Wars. It's the first day. I've only had 3 days to learn those lines. I'm in midair. There's a camera pointing at my eye. You know, this must be a close-up. Is it showing me in a state of terror, or is it showing me acting my character?
Geonosis is a very desolate environment except for the presence of these major underground factories. Sounds were created for the factory activity. Part of the backbone of that is a deep, almost heartbeat-like pulsing.
Look, whatever happens out there, follow my lead. I'm not interested in getting into a war here.
This is one of those. And it allowed me to have a little bit more humor with R2 and 3PO, which circumstances hadn't really permitted too much of that old-fashioned kind of R2 and 3PO banter back and forth and humor.
My obtuse little friend, if they had needed our help, they would have asked for it. You obviously have a great deal to learn about human behavior.
The off-screen pulsing in scenes such as the interrogation scene between Obi-Wan and Count Dooku, the sort of heartbeat of the factory continues. And it may be kind of mistaken for a musical element. It's almost like a drum, like a timpani. But it's just to keep the audience reminded of the fact that they are underground near this very powerful and vast arms factory where droids and weapons and ships are being made.
I am programmed to understand humans. What does that mean? That means I am in charge here. Hey, where are you going now? You don't know what's out there. Have you no sense at all? Oh, idiot! Please wait. Do you know where you're going?
This is the factory, and the factory is pretty elaborate. We had some very nice pieces of art and some really good animatics. I think when they'd originally shot it, they had a rough idea of what was going to be happening in the factory, but no specifics. One of the first things to make it sort of try and make sense was that it divided up the factory into different areas, so the different conveyor belts were actually doing something. Here you can really see the depth of the factory. It was very important to George to get a sense of the vastness and depth of this space.
I actually got to do a lot of my own stunt stuff on this. Not like I'm doing anything really dangerous, but there's a lot of sort of like running, jumping that I got to do that was really fun. When they get dropped into the droid factory, they made me look so cool. I was so excited when I saw it because there's like a sort of stamper that's like making the droids. And I get put on this conveyor belt and I'm sort of dodging and running and it was all blue around me. So I basically had to run and just sort of like dodge things and sort of like jump and run and I'm just completely making stuff up. And then they painted stuff around me that looks like I'm like jumping through things and I look so brave, but there was nothing there. It was just me interacting with imaginary objects like a crazy person.
Oh my goodness.
I needed an action piece here. It became a perfect environment for a chase and, machines crushing things. And it was fun. We shot this in like a day and a half on a conveyor belt and then put it together later. And this is one of those where ILM just did an amazing job. And the Videomatic department, upstairs from the editing rooms, put this together. And it was just super. Because all we did was cut a bunch of blue screen shots together. It turned into a very exciting sequence.
You want to have some anchor in the sense of reality or in something that's sort of more tangible. So it makes a lot of sense sometimes to shoot a miniature background like some of this stuff, these towers on the left and right are miniature that you can see here. You get a good basis of lighting. You get the smoke that we can put into the set. And it gives the technical directors that are working on the lighting of the computer graphics elements a strong foundation of a lighting scheme that's been worked out with George.
Now that I have the technical capabilities, I can do the moves later. So I can do matched moves on 3 or 4 shots in a row, which allow me to do a particular kind of style that's developed, where I'm able to keep the camera moving subtly, but through things. Normally it's a little hard to do that because it's hard to time the zooms. But now I can time the zooms to go through 3 or 4 shots in a row. Just pick it up from one shot to the other. And I do that quite a bit now, especially in action sequences, or I can use the stop of the zoom to make a dramatic point rather than to just sort of have one zoom shot and then go to a regular shot. I can go to zoom, 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 and then when I go to the regular shot, the shock of the zoom stopping means something.
The shots with Padme in the Foundry here, it made a lot of sense because we had a lot of shots in this sort of contained area to use a miniature, because then we could light it and that sort of thing, and then just add a minimal CG. So it, comes down to, what resources you have. It gives you often a good cost-effective approach, but also I think it's always good to get that foundation, use some sort of real photographic element, even if it's a shot on a soundstage, to keep you honest, keep the CG looking real.
This whole droid factory becomes a kind of montage in the tradition of silent movies. It also allowed me to bring R2 in and let him, through his little Swiss Army knife reality, save the day again, which I always like to have R2 do at least once in every movie. He's the stalwart, unsung hero of the Star Wars films. I had one cut of the film where they came and actually just walked in the front door, met with Count Dooku, had a diplomatic argument with him and negotiated with him, and then were put on trial and sent off to the execution arena. But it just didn't work in the overall flow of the movie.
Not again. Obi-Wan's gonna kill me.
Don't move, Jedi. Take him away.
We finally get to the arena, which is the beginning of the last really big, long section. I mean, the droid factory was one part of it, but it's broken up with this little love theme. This little moment where Padme finally gives in and reveals that she actually does love Anakin, and in the face of death and the face of the fact that this is all going to be over, she does succumb to her emotions. She does let down the sort of social barriers that have been put up and, practical reality of what would happen to them in the future if they were to let their emotions run wild. And so, feeling that fate is going to finish them off anyway, she lets herself go and they fall in love, which brings a lot of consequences later. But at this point, they have no idea they're going to actually be rescued in this. So this is sort of their last words, so to speak.
I truly, deeply love you.
The arena has been broken into a bunch of sections. We have what we call the monster fight, which is the monster execution, which is the first section. And then that leads into the Jedi fight, which is when the Jedi arrive and we have a big battle. And then we have the third section, which is the what we call the Clone War, which is when Yoda arrives, the clones, and that battle. And then it finally ends in a sword fight with Count Dooku, a more personal battle. It's really 3 very large action sequences set one after the other, with nothing in between them. this was structured this way in the script. The droid factory was added, so it added a sort of a fifth one. But it was really designed that from the moment they had that love scene, that the whole movie just sort of shot along. And then we have this little denouement at the end where we sort of tie everything up. That one last little check-in with everybody that has the last revelations and things.
I was beginning to wonder if you'd got my message.
I retransmitted it just as you had requested, Master. Then we decided to come and rescue you.
Good job.
This was fun. It's sort of the Rancor pit, only done in broad daylight and done with lots of different creatures and done with an audience. And, you know, before, I couldn't even think of doing something on this scale, you know, in an arena. When we did the pod race, it was the first time we were able to do a crowd and that sort of thing. So now suddenly I can do crowds and arenas. And so I can think about things like this.
The monsters didn't have to communicate any emotion or content other than abject, what's the word? They were killers. They were out to get our heroes. The challenge was really to come up with 3 different distinctive voices for the 3 characters. The Nexu, which is something of a combination between a wild cat and a rat, was made up mostly of cat and dog sounds. The Reek, being the biggest and heaviest of them, was manufactured out of elephant, bull, cow, and horse sounds. The Accolade, the giant crab, so to speak, oddly enough, was made out of marine creatures, dolphins, whales, porpoises.
Just relax. Concentrate.
What about Padme?
She seems to be on top of things.
I was really excited to fight alongside the Jedi because in the first one, I didn't really get much to do. And I told George, I don't just want to be the girl kind of getting saved by the guys. And, she's still definitely less of a fighter than the guys, which we need to work on. But yeah, it's much better in this one. In the fight sequences, I just really had to be brave, I guess. I really didn't have that scary stuff to do, but just stunts in general make me nervous. So, I had to just kind of suck it up a lot of times. And when I had to jump off, a high thing, I would just jump. You just have to sort of throw yourself into it a little more, which I think is really important because it's a lot of commitment to do something so physical. You really have to throw yourself into it, and that sort of goes along with acting too.
In this film, Natalie Portman actually has got to do a few stunts. She falls out of a hover ship, has a difficult fight in an execution arena, and Natalie makes a good account of herself.
We were able to have some funds there. This scene here with Obi-Wan and the crab is our Ray Harryhausen homage.
With actors on any films, you have to know them. I mean, that not just what part they're playing. You have to know the actor. Just be able to realize what they can do and make them aware of that. Most actors these days are pretty cool people, and if they know your work and they know they're not going to get hurt and they trust you, they'll do it gladly.
This is a leap forward of being able to put Anakin on the back of the Reek and have it jump around. We're able to use some actual digital Anakins and Obi-Wans and Padme's.
Jump!
Luckily, all of us, all the heads of departments, we've all been together for years now. So we all know each other really well. We know the kind of level that we can push each other to be able to build every single item, every set piece, every vehicle, and all make it working in such a short, crazed period of time. It's phenomenal achievement. I mean, I sit in awe when I think about how lucky I am with the people I've got. It's been amazing the last decade with them.
I was amazed when I found out that Christopher Lee was actually doing the film. So all of a sudden, when I get on set and I see him, he is everything that I thought he would be. He's this huge presence, you know. He's tall and carries himself so regally.
Master Windu, how pleasant of you to join us.
This party's over. And it never occurred to me growing up and watching him do all these films that I would ever meet him, let alone be in a scene with him. I'm the only person in the entire universe, in the entire existence, who has a purple saber. Get that violet light. Me. How I convinced George to do that, hey, it's beyond me. I just kept saying it over and over and over. George, give me the purple light. George, give me the purple light. George, give me the purple light. And he did. People will be trying to figure out for years and years, centuries, what is the deeper meaning of Mace Windu's purple light. Only I know the secret. George doesn't even know. He has no idea why I asked. But it's something for all of you to try to unlock. And if you can get into my mind, you too will know why I have violet light.
My legs aren't moving. I must need maintenance.
This is where we took a long time, lots of second units shooting individual Jedi doing actions that then were placed meticulously back there one at a time. It's like paste-on kind of fighting. So there's a lot of shooting in this sequence to get to even one shot. And you end up with lots of little pieces, lots of ideas, some of the ideas you can't use. And obviously, lots of people are coming up with little bits and pieces. Wouldn't it be funny if, and what about this? And, you get a lot with the animators and with, like Ben shooting second unit or cutting. There's the little group that's in the center of things is constantly trying to do little asides and jokes and come up with things.
A battle! There's been some terrible mistake. I'm programmed for etiquette, not destruction.
It was great fun. It was great fun learning the choreography. Nick and I came up with some very interesting things to do. It's efficient, lethal, a sort of a hybrid of traditional fencing and kendo with some improvisational street fighting thrown in. My fight with Django is a combination of his trying to escape and me trying to stop him. So there are a few elements, him flying around, him shooting projectiles at me defending myself, and then going on the offensive. And once that happens, he's pretty much toast. It's hard in some of its sword movements and very soft in some of my bodily movements. So it incorporates some sort of balletic moves with these very hard sword moves, which makes it sort of look like a French samurai fight.
But why didn't Django just run away like he normally does? That's what he got the rocket pack for, but his rocket pack was damaged, and so that's why Mace was able to kill him, because he was expecting to fly away and he didn't. It makes him look less impotent, because he is Jango Fett after all. He is powerful. Mace is powerful, but Jango Fett is too.
Die, Jedi dogs! What did I say?
The Twilight Jedi is something that came a little later. When we started building Jedis, we had a lot of Jedis, and we needed more and more Jedis. As we were doing them toward the end, we ended up with a lot of Jedis that looked like people that worked at ILM, with these short little haircuts and looked like they stepped out from behind a computer. And so I was saying we have to get more exotic Jedis. And so we only have so much resources to do these things. But I do have Twi'leks because we use them quite a bit in other areas in the Senate and as background action. So I have a sort of a wardrobe and a setup of certain kinds of characters. So it was a way of reinventing some of those characters. And I had realized that we had a comic book that has a Twi'lek in it that is a Jedi. There's a whole series actually of her. And I said, well, why don't we put her in this? I mean, she's a comic character, but we'll just fit her in and have her be a background character because that's exotic. And that's how the Twilight Jedi ended up in the backgrounds of these shots, was to try to use some of the work and effort that the guys in the comic book world had put into things and characters they had created.
R2, what are you doing here?
One of the nice things was in the droid factory. Once we got in the droid factory, all these fun ideas came up about 3PO getting a droid head put on him and, doing that kind of thing. And then we're able to pay it off here in the battle by having R2 come to 3PO's rescue by putting him back together again.
Good, I'm quite beside myself.
Each of the Jedi in the background have their own signature moves. You can see that there's one Jedi who likes to fight with 2 lightsabers. He's seen periodically in the background. There's another guy whose signature move is to kick a droid over and then stab it on the ground.
In the story, there isn't really a big Jedi battle until the Clone War. Even if I'd wanted to do it, I couldn't. Until I got the digital technology, I couldn't really do a scene like this. So I really had to wait until we sort of advanced to the point where I could tell this story. And, made the commitment, obviously, on Phantom Menace that I was going to get there somehow. And I say it was the experiment of Phantom Menace that got us to this point where I could think about doing something like this. But on Phantom Menace, we had to invent all these droids and make these droids happen and figure out how to do that and create the droid army. And, it's just a huge amount of work went into that we didn't know how we were going to do it or whether it was going to work. And then we had that. Now we can then add the Jedis in, but you can't do it. It's just impossible to do it all at once.
Look!
Action sequences require a lot of carefully measured rhythmic and metric aspects of music, at least in the style of George Lucas's films, where the orchestra goes through all the choreographic moves of the action, or many of them. And it's a series of quick cuts and that ascend or that descend and suddenly stop. All of that kinetic activity is expressed musically in a similar way that one would do in a cartoon. That's the style of his films. And so the action music is very explicit rhythmically to what we see. And it traces it in the same way that you would do in a ballet, following a dancer to go very quickly as she goes to here, stop, as she flies. As the spaceship lifts, we get a lift under the cord and it descends and does all of this. So most of this is I won't say unappreciated, but most of it's unnoticed by the audience. But they get a feeling from it, feeling that there's a flow to all of this action, and the music supports it in a very theatrical way.
Here come the attack gunships and Yoda. And what's lovely about this is the wind blowing in Yoda's clothing and his hair.
Rally more systems.
There's actually wind blowing in his hair. That's digital hair. That's not real hair. That's digital clothing. And the simulation team's just doing a fabulous job because for you, the audience, we want it to feel like he's really flying. He's really interacting with his environment.
Aim right above the fuel cells. Good call, my young Padawan.
All the clone troopers are digital. There's no one in a suit anywhere. They're jumping off the ship, firing. It's motion capture or animation, depending on what we're doing.
This whole scene in the control room was added later because I realized when I cut the film together, we'd lost sight of Dooku after he leaves the arena and what happened to him and everything. So in one of my reshoots, which I do, and I set out time to do reshoots to look at the movie and say, oh, I need something here, I need something here. It's just the way part of the process that I work under. I added this whole scenes with Dooku and decided we put a hologram version of the battle going on there. But that comes organically out of when you start to see the whole movie and the battle put together and you can sort of watch it. And you can say, oh, we need to be able to have this there and now I can see this here. Because there's so much going on and it is so complicated that until you can actually see it, and it is so visual, that you need to see it visually before you can actually begin to see what's missing.
To the forward command center. Take me.
It's interesting, the evolution editorially of the Clone War battle, because The initial concept was that there'd be a land battle taking place on Geonosis, but we really wouldn't see it up close. We would only really see it from the point of view of the gunships flying at high altitude over it. And our heroes were on the ships and they were looking down at the battle.
Attack those Federation starships, quickly!
It was really just a backdrop. But as the sequences developed, and in particular the art department came in with many of these fabulous designs for tanks and walking machines and weapons, it became tantalizing to create some of those machines up close and cut to them once in a while so we could see them. Well, as those shots were created by the Videomatic department, and I would cut them in and make up various versions of the Clone War, we all reacted quite positively and with a lot of enthusiasm for the battle scenes. And so they began to grow. And more time was spent on the ground in each subsequent cut of the film, in each subsequent cut of the Clone War, until we ended up with really being in the ground battle, being surrounded by stormtroopers and weapons and gunfire and smoke. And what started out as a somewhat detached sequence as a backdrop became something very, very up close and in your face.
The idea of the Death Star being added in there does sort of add a continuity that goes all the way through to 4, which I liked. And once you begin to put things together, you begin to see how you can draw lines and connect things and make them have more continuity from picture to picture. The whole issue of where these clones came from, who set this whole thing up and everything is, purposely not revealed in this film. But it's hopefully downplayed enough to where you're not frustrated or upset the fact that you don't know what's going on. We also introduced the idea of the fact that somebody named Tyrannus is involved in this clone situation. We don't know who Tyrannus is, and we don't really find out until the end of the film, which again plays a pivotal part in the next film.
A lot of the droids are motion capture, which means we capture the movement of a real person and then map that or put that onto the computer-generated character. Others are keyframe animated. I mean, it was either too dangerous to have someone do the action or too impossible, like when a character gets his head knocked off and falls over. Clearly, I can't do that with a real person. So those are keyframe animated. We took some real care to make sure that the movement of the droids from Episode 1 was consistent with what we were doing in Episode 2 and vice versa. These super battle droids were a lot of fun. We really liked them. They're all keyframe animated.
All quadrants to Sector 515.
They're new for this movie, of course. Added an extra level to the droid army. Of course, all those clones, every clone you can see back there, and there are hundreds of them, and in such like this next one, there's about 1,000 of them, are all animated. They're all motion capture.
Count Dooku, or Darth Tyrannus, as he really is one of the elect, one of the chosen, commits acts which would be considered wrong, wicked, evil. But I remember what Anthony Hopkins said once when he was accused of playing villains. He said, I don't play villains, I play people. And that's very important to me, because to me, the character I play is a person. He's obviously a man of immense power, a being of immense power, mental power and physical power, because he is the greatest swordsman in the galaxy, which he has to show during the course of this enormous contest that he has with 3 different characters. He fights Anakin, he fights Obi-Wan Kenobi, and he fights Yoda. And he gets away.
I can't take you alone. I need you. If we catch him, we can end this war right now.
Getting all the characters to have their job during the war and then having them all come back together again at the end was a little complicated because there's so much going on. But by putting Count Dooku in a separate hangar to take off on an interstellar ship allowed me to have our heroes see him and then Yoda sense what is going on and then have them ultimately end up all in the same place, which is in the climactic sword fight.
The droid army is in full retreat. Well done, Commander. Bring me a ship.
At one time, I was going to have them both fight him at the same time, but that didn't really seem to work as well as me doing each one individually.
There are very few actors, no matter what kind of work they're doing, they still, at the end of the day, want to be able to tell their kids, ultimately, they've been in Star Wars. That has more impact, especially in considering the huge sacrifices they make with being away from home and being away from their families. You know, once you're in Star Wars, somehow it makes it all worthwhile. There is this history, there's these films, there's an idea, there's a celebration of imagination that's been going on for years. But at the same time, it's something that has such a huge cultural impact on so many people that it makes it an incredibly worthwhile experience for them.
Back down.
I don't think so. Obi-Wan Kenobi's fighting style is, well, it's interesting because it became more apparent what it was like when I saw Hayden fighting, you know, and how clever Nick Gillard had been at constructing different styles. Because you're so wrapped up in what you're doing, you don't really notice that until you're on set fighting with other people. So there I was, and I saw Anakin, who's much more kind of, there's much more youthful, and I think Obi-Wan Kenobi's slightly more sedate, certainly in the second film, than he was in the first. And a bit more straight to the point, in fact. And Anakin's got more youthful, kind of bigger to him.
We'd better get back to the forward command center.
No. No. Gather what troops you can. We've got to get to that hangar. Get a transport. Hurry!
Right away.
I think people like Star Wars fights, I don't know about the stunts, just because of the lightsaber, because the lightsaber is just such a beautiful thing, you know, and what ILM do to it and what Ben Burt does to the sound makes it something, and that it, you know, these are guys fighting with swords in space. It's something special.
Because it's a more gentlemanly weapon, I think. I mean, that's what Alec Guinness says in the very first Star Wars, Episode 4. I think he says something like that. It's a gentleman's weapon, and the blasters are rather crude and unspecific, and it looks much better on film. You can get much closer to your opponent and see the whites of his eyes.
I think that in the action scenes is the perfect time to sort of give glimpses of darkness and sort of, you know, sometimes where Anakin loses control, and when he fights, he kind of lets everything out, and he's very aggressive. Christopher Lee was a pleasure to work with in so many ways. He's, you know, he comes from the old school style of acting. He's an old British actor, which I've never had the opportunity to work with someone like that. And, you know, he's just such a character. He has so many stories. He's, you know, has been through so many different experiences in his career, and he loves to share them all.
This is what we've been waiting for.
Master Yoda.
Count Dooku.
You have interfered with our affairs for the last time.
After Anakin is defeated and Yoda comes, I took a completely different route with this sword fight. We had all these controversy about whether this was going to work, and could Yoda actually fight, you know, a 2-foot frog fight, a 6'2" Sith Lord. And I started out doing it fairly conservatively, where he just came and fought. That really didn't work. And it was actually, you know, Ben Burt and John Knoll and a bunch of the people sort of in editorial and ILM were saying, you know, we got to make more out of this. You got to use Jedi powers, and you can't just go right into the sword fight. So I decided to go back to the Empire Strikes Back of throwing things at each other, even though I knew they were equal to each other. So it was a hopeless gesture, and they would have figured that out in 2 seconds. But for the audience, it's nice for them to go through this process of everybody throwing everything around. Then with the blue lightning bolt kind of things that we had from the Emperor that he used against Anakin, the fact that he used them against Yoda, but Yoda is not affected by them, that Yoda has come to a level beyond. Anakin doesn't know how to deal with it. Obi-Wan uses his laser sword to stop it. Yoda can actually just use his hand, and which makes him much more powerful, and say that none of that stuff's going to work on me. So that then we were able to build to the sword fight. and then have the surprise of the fact that he can just jump all over the place. And I was sort of depending on that surprise. I very much like the idea, which is continuing from Empire Strikes Back when you first see him, is he's these funny little green frog living in the swamps, and then eventually you realize that this is a great Jedi Master. Well, in this sequence, it's the same idea. You have this funny little wizened old man who's very old and walks with a cane and hobbles around, and then he pulls out his laser sword and he jumps around like a kid and is really powerful. And then when he finishes, he's all tired again. He goes back to using his cane again. I thought that was an amusing idea, that you have this sort of Clark Kent. Only in this case, it's an old green 800-year-old wizened Jedi Master who walks around one way, but it actually underneath is very powerful. Once ILM got in there and they started to do the cloth simulation and the other things, it really made it a powerful sequence. And ultimately, I think it's just the look on his face that really makes it all credible.
We only build sections, parts. You know, it's hard. You have to visualize and be very disciplined about the way you conceptualize a scene. There's nothing we can't cover in blue. And often there is nothing that we don't. I mean, it's the fun for us. I mean, technology is only a tool. It's only a way to be able to express yourself in a way that you don't have the money for. George had a very, very focused idea, a place that had somehow fused in his memory. And he found a painting that came the closest to what he had imagined. So it was wonderful to be able to recreate that for him, you know, that comes collectively to the memory or the yearning of what he had in his original mind's eye when he was writing the script. And we do that to be much more economic, much faster, but at the same time, we use it as a platform for us to exploit and break new ground in technology, which is, you know, part of the really fun stuff for us also.
It's particularly fascinating for me in this film that Christopher Lee is also involved in the dark side of he started off very nobly as a Jedi, because I think he is one of the great screen villains of all time. His Dracula will never be surpassed. And you'd say, well, why? What's so special? I don't know, really. It's just total centered believability in the nature of evil, which is hard to do when you're not, you know, that really isn't your bent. It's hard to do, but it's wonderful to act. It's just very exciting.
The Force is with us, Master Sidious.
Welcome home, Lord Tyrannus. You have done well.
I have good news for you, my lord. The war has begun.
Excellent. Everything is going as planned.
And it's an interesting sequence ultimately because I had to create a situation where all the Jedi lose, you know, and the Sith gets away to fight another day. Because this is a continuing series after all. So it's a hard kind of ending to have everybody lose and still hopefully have a satisfying ending to the movie. And the real issue is that the Sith Lord gets away in the end, and our guys aren't completely destroyed. But it does make the bad guys very formidable. You know, it doesn't have the normal ending. We do kill the one bad guy, which is our friend Jango Fett. So there is that kind of comeuppance in the end for the bad guys, but the really top bad guys get away, just as Darth Vader did in Episode 4.
The dark side has fallen.
It's the world on a large scale. That's the Shakespearean canvas. I know George likes Shakespeare, and he talks about him now and again. You could talk about Wagner if you liked, and there are a good few others you could talk about. People who mirrored large societies through the dilemmas of particular individuals, usually young people finding out what it was to cope with the business of living. And I was talking about it earlier on in a small way about me, but also to cope with the notion of fear, what it does to you what it can do to you if you don't recognize it, and even worse, if you let it get a hold of you.
We have to strengthen the Jedi, and I had to set up the fact that they were going to have to lead the Clone Wars into battle as we get into the middle of the Clone War here, that they were going to continue to have to work with the clones, and that's an essential part of where the story is going. And so we don't say it's the beginning of the Empire. It's implied in the power that's been given to the Grand Chancellor Palpatine, and it turns into it. And then that is contrasted with the idyllic situation on Naboo where Anakin and Padme are getting married in what will be a doomed relationship, which they have already stated earlier on is not going to work. But they do love each other. I mean, they're truly in love with each other, and it's the issue of true love over duty. It's really the Romeo and Juliet aspect of it, of a doomed relationship in more ways than one, really. You know, she married the wrong guy. This marriage will end up with, the birth of their children, which go on into the next trilogy.